The engines of the West are going silent, and no one's ready for who's taking the wheel next. For over a century, the United States, Europe, and Japan defined what it meant to build a car. Ford gave the world mass production. Germany gave precision engineering. Japan gave reliability and efficiency. But now, those same empires are trembling, because the new king of the road isn't from Detroit, Munich, or Tokyo. It's from Shenzhen, and the man sounding the alarm isn't just anyone. He's a former General Motors executive who's seen the future from the inside, and it terrified him. His warning is simple, but chilling. China is gutting Western automakers. And the scariest part? It's already happening. How did China pull off this industrial coup? And can the West fight back before it's too late? The warning that shook Detroit. Meet Michael Dunn, a veteran insider, a man who spent decades in the boardrooms and factories of the world's biggest automakers. He knows the system. He knows its weaknesses. And when he speaks, Detroit listens. Dunn's message is brutally clear. China is gutting Western automakers using a simple but deadly formula. Scale up, flood in, starve out. It sounds like a movie script, but this isn't fiction. This is reality unfolding in real time. And unless something changes, the West's century-long dominance in the auto industry could be gone in less than a decade. Scale up. China builds an army of cars. Let's start with the first phase. Scale up. China didn't want to just compete. It wanted to overwhelm. Over the past 10 years, China quietly built enough factory capacity to produce 50 million vehicles every single year. That's not a typo. 50 million. To put that in perspective, that's 5 times what the United States builds annually. Imagine a country blanketed with car factories, assembly lines stretching from coast to coast, running non-stop, 24 hours a day. Electric vehicles rolling off production belts faster than most Western companies can even design their prototypes. This is not growth. This is industrial warfare. And this overcapacity ignited a brutal price war that's now shredding profit margins worldwide. Cars are being sold at razor-thin profits, sometimes even at a loss, just to dominate markets. But here's the thing. China doesn't care about short-term profits. Because for them, this isn't about money. It's about control. Control of markets. Control of supply chains. Control of the future of mobility. Flood in. The global takeover begins. Once the factories were built, the next phase began. Flood in. China's car export machine roared to life. In 2020, they exported about 1 million cars. By 2025, over 7 million. A 7-fold increase in just 5 years. No country in history has ever moved that fast. Chinese brands like BYD, MG, Chery, and Geely are now household names across Europe, Asia, and even Latin America. In the UK alone, BYD's sales have exploded by 880% in a single year. It's now the largest non-European automaker in the country. And forget the old stereotypes. These aren't cheap knockoffs anymore. They're high-tech, feature-packed, and aggressively priced, often thousands cheaper than their Western rivals. They come loaded with solid-state batteries, facial recognition systems, and interior designs that rival luxury brands, all for less than a Tesla Model 3. For customers, it's a no-brainer. For Ford, GM, and Volkswagen, it's a living nightmare. As one Ford executive recently admitted, the speed of Chinese advancement is the most humbling thing I've ever seen. Starve out, control the supply chain, and now the final move. Starve out. China didn't just build cars, it built everything that makes a car possible. Batteries, chips, rare earth magnets, lithium processing, every single component that powers the modern EV, controlled by China. Here's the staggering truth. China refines 90% of the world's rare earth elements, the metals that make electric motors spin. Without them, EVs simply don't move. Even the F-35 fighter jet, America's crown jewel, relies on these Chinese materials, nearly 900 pounds per jet. That's not business leverage. That's geopolitical dominance. And when Beijing recently began restricting exports of these critical materials, Western factories slowed to a crawl. China didn't blink, because this was always part of the plan. They're not just making the world buy Chinese cars, they're making the world depend on China to make cars at all. How the West fell asleep at the wheel. How did this happen? How did the industrial titans of the world, the companies that once built icons like the Mustang, the Beetle, and the Civic, fall so far behind? The answer is painful. They fell asleep at the wheel. While China poured billions into EV technology, battery gigafactories, and mining operations, Western automakers clung to the past, to the roaring engines that once made them rich. They laughed at Chinese cars. They dismissed them as toys. And now they're paying the price. In Germany, automakers are producing the fewest cars since the year 2000, excluding the global financial crisis. Volkswagen, Mercedes, and Bosch are cutting tens of thousands of jobs. Factories are going dark. Meanwhile, China's automakers are building new ones in Europe, in Mexico, in Southeast Asia. They're expanding globally while Western giants retreat. The tables have turned, and this time, they may never turn back. The strategy behind the takeover. Michael Dunn calls it the formula for domination. Step 1. Scale up. Build enormous capacity to flood the market. Step 2. Flood in. Export relentlessly with unbeatable prices. Step 3. Starve out. Control raw materials so no one else can compete. And it's working with brutal precision. China now produces over half of the world's electric vehicles. It owns 80% of global battery production. And every year, that dominance deepens. This isn't just a success story. It's a silent takeover, an economic war fought with lithium and logic boards instead of tanks and missiles. The price of dependence. If Western nations don't act soon, the consequences go far beyond cars. Because without control of critical materials like lithium, cobalt, and rare earths, they won't just lose their auto industries. They'll lose their technological independence. Think about it. Every electric vehicle, every wind turbine, every smartphone, every fighter jet, all rely on supply chains that run through China. If that flow stops, the modern world stops with it. It's not an exaggeration. It's reality. Factories would halt. Prices would soar. Economies would shake. And yet governments are still reacting as if this is just a trade issue. It's not. It's a question of national survival. Can the West fight back? So, is it already too late? Can the United States, Europe, and Japan still fight back before the gap becomes permanent? Michael Dunn believes there's still a narrow window, but it's closing fast. If the world doesn't act collectively, he warns, it could wake up one morning to find the entire mobility industry and the technologies that flow from it running on China's terms. Some are beginning to move. Tesla is investing billions in domestic battery production, trying to reduce dependence on Chinese suppliers. But even Tesla still relies heavily on China for raw materials and components. Ford, GM, and others are years behind. scrambling to catch up to a future that China already built. Europe is debating tariffs and subsidies, while Chinese brands are opening factories inside Europe's borders. This isn't a trade war. It's a time bomb, ticking louder every year. The final warning. The writing is on the wall. Factories in the West are slowing down. Workers are being laid off, and Chinese cars are quietly flooding showrooms from London to Los Angeles. China isn't hiding its plan. In 2020, President Xi Jinping said it openly: make the world more dependent on China. Make China less dependent on the world. It wasn't just a statement, it was a strategy. And now, that strategy is reality. So here's the question that decides the future of the global auto industry. Can the West reclaim its engine? Or has it already surrendered it? Because this isn't just about cars anymore. It's about who builds the future and who just drives it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Can the West fight back? Or has China already won the race for the road ahead? If you enjoyed this deep dive into the real war shaping the future of mobility, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell icon. Because the next automotive revolution has already begun.